false start a few minutes ago. I kind of jumped the gun, but I wanted to make sure that it was actually working. So for context, the problem is I bought a new phone because my old phone was getting a little long in the tooth on battery life, and I don't know, figured it was time for a new phone. Um, we're currently watching from the old phone. The new phone is one of these fancy folding phones. And as you can see, oops. Let people oh no! I don't know how to go back. I'm fairly certain this video is going to be sideways. And my phone's not giving me an option to rotate it. Stop it! Okay, anyway, as you can see, rotation clearly works fine in the app, except for when you're streaming. So, thanks YouTube, really cool. Or Samsung, I don't know whose problem this is, but whatever. Anyway, we'll just use the old phone for streaming. So how you guys doing tonight? Forgive my technical ineptitude. I didn't anticipate Samsung doing that to me. Anyway. Long time no video, no stream. Sorry about that. Life has been interesting. Anyway, I've got that new kit from Funnyplaying. So before I get into this, I want to reiterate that this is a sample. This is not the final kit. Funnyplaying listed their kit. They put it up for sale yesterday, I think it was, on Friday. This version predates that one that is for sale by at least a month or two. It is not feature complete. So what that means is the version that Funnyplaying sent me does not have an OSD. I don't know specifically what that means in terms of features and what features it may or may not be missing, but it does not have an OSD. If you purchase one of these, the one you get will have an OSD. It should be a more feature-complete version than the one I have. I want to reiterate that, and I'm putting it at the video. I'm probably going to say it again several times throughout this stream as people pop in, but I just want to reiterate that because I'm going to show this thing. There are going to be a few small issues, and I really don't want to give the wrong impression about the kit that you may or may not have already purchased. On that note, I think buying a kit on blind faith was a little risky if you're one of those folks, but I wish you the best. Anyway, the reason I want to do this now and instead of waiting for the final kit is because this kit does not work the same way that all of the other IPS kits work. So before we even get into this, let me tell you a tale here. Let me remind you folks some things. So, God, I think it was like 2.5, almost 3 years ago, Funnyplaying put out their original 9380 based kit. It was only for the Game Boy Advance. I decided to install one in a Game Boy Advance SP because of who I am as a person. This kit was not very popular. Well, it was very popular. Funnyplaying announced it. They sold it. They sold tons of these things before people actually got their hands on one and realized that, oh, this isn't actually that great, is it? For those that don't remember, let me give you a little reminder here. So again, they have not sold this kit in a very long time. And if you were one of the few folks that did buy this kit, you did get a very, very hefty discount on the fixed version of this kit. I don't usually use my EverDrive. Is it in here? Yeah, I think 240p should be good. And forgive me in advance because I usually do this type of video as a VOD instead of a stream, just because YouTube limits streams to like 720p 30 FPS or something like that. Let me see what I've got. Yeah, just 720p 30, yeah. Whereas when I record, I can do 4K 60, and I think that's important for looking at what the screen does. But let me go, is it the scrolling test? Yeah. So if we pull up the scrolling test and I try and hold still, I don't know if it's coming out too well on camera, but you can see it's kind of jiggling. You get that what they call jelly scrolling. That's not the technical term, but enough people have used that if you search jelly scrolling, you'll see exactly what's going on. The problem is with these original kits, the V1 as it were, these screens are actually rotated. So normally how a screen works is the data is sent pixel by pixel, line by line. So the Game Boy Advance is expecting a landscape aspect ratio. So it's sending pixel starting all the way at the top left, working its way over right line by line, just like this, until you get the whole screen. And that happens a little bit less than 60 times a second. When all goes well, you get a nice, smooth, fluid representation of motion, I guess. The problem is that these particular screens are portrait screens. They're designed much the same way, except that they are filled line by line, left to right, this way, in portrait, instead of landscape. So what that means is, with how the data is being filled out, you get partial screen refreshes. Funnyplaying solved this problem by just putting a screen buffer on the darn thing and not drawing any pixels until you've actually got a full frame worth of data. Personally, I think it was a little overblown, but I can see why people were mad, because in a lot of games it is extremely noticeable and it is extremely detrimental to the process. Ooh, this is even better. So, just a word of warning. That's kind of where this video is going to be going with this new kit. Now, my understanding is that this new kit does have a frame buffer. I'm fairly certain these are portrait screens as well, so that they're drawn left to right like that, much like the old 9380s. However, the difference is the scaling on this screen is not quite integer scaling. So what does that mean? An integer scale means that for every 1 pixel that Game Boy is putting out, the screen is using 4 pixels, a ratio of 1 to 4, to accurately represent that pixel. So on this LCD itself, every 4 pixels that you see on a static image is being generated from 1 pixel that the Game Boy is sending. That is not the case for this screen. I believe it uses, for the horizontal scaling, I believe it uses a 3:1 ratio, which would mean 9 pixels. But for the horizontal scaling, or I don't know, it gets kind of confusing because it's a rotated screen. It's not quite an integer, it's like 2.5 instead of 3. That does result in some blurry text, yada yada. I'm sorry, I forgot to give the spoiler warning. This is one of those things where if you didn't look for it specifically, a lot of you might not even notice it. Like, it's something that I would consider a problem, but it's also a relatively minor one. It's one of those things where once it's pointed out to you, it's kind of all you can see. And I'm sorry, but this is how my life has been for like the last 10 years. I look for this sort of stuff because of who I am as a person. And anytime I get a screen on something, anything, that's all I can see. That's all I look for. Like for totally unrelated example, I got one of these Miu Mini devices, and this thing does have actually a fantastic screen on it, but it's a 4:3 aspect ratio instead of a 3:2 that the Game Boy uses, and I think it's 640 by 480, whereas the original Game Boy Advance is 240 by 160. And if you do the math on that, it doesn't really work out to an integer. On the same note, the Analog Pocket here, for Game Boy games, it does actually use a 10x integer scale, and it's pretty good. But if you put a Game Boy Advance game in here, you see you've got the letterboxing on the top and bottom, and if we go into the scaling, you'd have to do the math on that. But 1067 is not an integer of, what did I say, it was 160? I think it works out to something like 5.6. But the screen itself is high enough resolution that unless you put this thing under a microscope, you can't even tell that it's not integer scaling. So it does work out pretty darn well. But anyway, that's enough intro. Let's get into this Jesus thing. So, I have no idea what this is supposed to come with, but this is what I was shipped. A screen assembly and the ribbon, and a prototype bracket for installing this into the shell. Now, I know Funnyplaying revised the bracket after they sent me this, and then they revised it again after it was brought to their attention the ripple effect when you press on the front of the Game Boy Advance for the ITA version. There's no batteries in that. Oh, there are batteries. I guess it's just dead. That's cool. That's what I get for forgetting to charge my stuff. Oh, that's awkward. Whatever, I'll figure that out later. Anyway, so I've got two version old bracket, a ribbon that is not feature complete, but I do have the final screen. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's get into this. I've got so much stuff on my desk. They also went ahead and sent me a bare screen that's not actually laminated, that I was doing a fit check on, and spoiler alert, it does fit in a slate, but we're probably not proceeding with these. But anyway, the LCD itself is quite similar in size to the 9380, but it is quite a bit skinnier, which I guess is mostly fine, because on these 9380 LCDs there are some letterboxing if you ever look at one of these things that's not being filtered by the lens, but the height itself is pretty much the same. For those that want to try and do some research on this, I'm fairly certain these are custom, but here are the numbers on the back of the LCD if you want to look that up. The text underneath that ribbon, that looks like a 02. Yeah, I think that's a 02. And then the only other thing is a symbol that doesn't matter. But there you go. Same screen, just not laminated. So tonight's donor, I went through the drawer of donors, and I found something that probably shouldn't have been in the donor drawer. So we're gonna not use this. But one of these two should be good. I'll save the spice for later. not have batteries handy. What the heck? Oh, they're on my charger. Be right back, sorry. Never mind, those are AAA's on the charger. This is why you take batteries out of your Game Boys before you put them away. And the only thing I have convenient and handy on my desk are these rechargeable ones, so I guess we'll just take it apart before even testing it. Thanks, Ricky RNS, for the $2. Appreciate it. And hello. I hope you are doing fantastic on this wonderful Saturday. And thank you, Hazi, for doing that membership thing. I should probably post another video. I have a few videos that I shot and then uploaded and then decided not to publish because I don't really like how they came out. But it's also kind of a shame to waste them, so I've been throwing them at the members only queue. And then there's also a few videos that I published to the members only thing before publishing to the rest of my channel, but I've also been feeling pretty darn burnt out lately and just haven't been making videos, hence my radically different upload schedule as of late. Sorry, but it is what it is. If I force myself to do it, it's just gonna not end well. Oh, that might be a problem. Yep, we're not using this. I sincerely doubt this thing even works with all that corrosion. Alright, back into the parts bin you go. I was a little nervous looking at the screws and all the gunk on them as they came out. Oh, and that's missing a screw. I'm sure that's fine. I'm gonna have to go grab another Game Boy for salvage. Digley, you haven't missed anything, and I believe the kit does have that pixel grid thing, but I don't know if my specific one does, because mine is not the retail version. Mine is a pre-release sample that does not have the OSD implemented. This kit... Wow, we're missing a lot of screws. Okay. Of course. Someone's messed with this. I'd wager someone was having audio problems, and they didn't realize that the problem was likely their headphone jack, because there's a little switch in the headphone jack that toggles audio on and off, and with all that corrosion on there, yeesh. The rest of the Game Boy doesn't look too bad, so let's see if it at least works. Hey! Well, almost. It needs a power switch clean, but it does work. Oh. That's not supposed to come out. Alright, let me go find another Game Boy. I'm sorry, guys. I thought my stack of 3 would be good. I'll be right back again. Alright, so in theory, one of these 4 should work. I know this silver one works, but I was going to save it for something. So, I'm also fairly certain this one works. So we're going to start with this one. Actually, I don't even have to do that. We'll just hold that on. Yeah. Ta-da! Cool. I'll do some better testing in a moment. And this is exactly why you always test before throwing your backlight kit in. Because if your Game Boy didn't work before putting the backlight kit in, it's certainly not going to work after. So I just want to get the back off so I can actually plug this in, because for whatever reason I don't have batteries handy. And unless you guys want to wait for me again to go find them, because heaven forbid I just have them on hand, we're just going to use the power supply. Oh, that looks so much cleaner. Look at that. That's what a Game Boy is supposed to look like on the inside. Alright. EverDrive in there. Accidentally hit the power switch. Alright, so I'm going to fire up the AGS aging ROM, make sure that runs through. If all of that passes, we should be good hardware-wise. I thought you could just hit start to run that again, but let's try that again. Hold L and R. Oops, I hit the wrong one. Hey, so L and R work. My start button doesn't, and my select button doesn't, but that might just be a matter of membranes, because every other button seems to work. Alright, so I am happy with how this thing is working. So let us continue the teardown. The power switch literally fell out of that orange Game Boy. just okay. Oh, we might as well do some power usage testing. Just because this isn't the final kit doesn't mean that we won't have valuable data. I don't see why my start and select isn't working. Could just be the membrane. I don't see any like corrosion or anything. Membrane itself looks good. Board's a little dirty. Not AGS, we want AGB membranes. There it is. Okay, so we're going to be using a 32-pin GBA, I think. Close that bail, and we want the same cart that I use for every other single test. Set that to 2.4 volts. Alright, so in the overworld, in the exact same place I'm always testing, this GBA at 2.4 volts is pulling 88 to 92 milliamps, so we'll call it 90 milliamps. Easy. And look at that, now my start and select are working. So we're good to go to continue the install. And guys, forgive me if I'm not stopping to answer every question. We'll be here all night if I do. If I see something that pops out as, oh yeah, I should probably actually address that, I will, but otherwise, the little things, forgive me. Let's try and save it to the end. What was I looking for? So for these laminated kits, you do really need the special Funnyplaying shell because it has this whole cutout here. Peel that off, there's no point in even having that. That the glass itself is beveled on the side. Hold that at an angle, you can see there's an angle to the edge of the glass. That sits in the shell like this. And then this bracket, I think it goes this way. Nope, got it backwards. Goes likely this way. Nope. There we go. This little tab at the top goes at the top, and that's what kind of holds everything together. There we go. And then it's supposed to sit just like that. Mine's not seated properly though. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, you do need that shell for this kit. Trimming a regular shell is going to be an exercise in futility trying to match that bezel. Oh yeah, I did have it backwards. That just works like that. This is another one of those things that once I started noticing, it was really hard to not notice, but this shape of the lens is very specific. And just about everyone who makes shells and lenses uses a slightly different shape. So if you've ever looked at, you know, maybe an older build, you might notice some gaps in some places. And please forgive me, I'm not using Boxy Pixel as an example. I'm not trying to do that in a negative light. It's just all the other Game Boys at my desk have matched lenses with their shells, but you can see there's that slight gap there. It's stupid difficult to get a shell, to get this shape to match on both the shell and the lens. Or actually, this is probably a better example, because this is one of those generic shells, and you can see up in the top corner there's a little bit of a gap there. Now these are all bad examples. It's gotten better, but generic shells aren't gonna work too well. Okay, let's do the test before we commit to the install. Now I have already tested this kit and it does seem to work, else I wouldn't have been able to post those pictures on the Twitter. But let's test it again anyway. I need... So when it comes to testing, you can plug that in. And then just drop this thing in the back shell. And then you've got your battery holder. You don't need like a power supply or anything for that. I'm going to use my power supply because I just literally don't have batteries. Alright. And I'm going to unplug this for now. So I'm going to use the bare screen here. And I'm fairly certain it goes contacts down. But it's not going to hurt anything if you don't get it right the first try. It's just going to not work. And then you've got that kind of like that, and you can fold that up and fold this one out of the way. Carker, how do you test it, but was able to get a picture with a working GBA, another GBA that was from another project? Yeah, Carker, that picture is from like 2 months ago. The GBA that I tested that with ended up going into this console. And I didn't want to take this apart. And now that it's been on the charger, it's just working, so not a problem. But it's my specific problem with having to find GBAs that work is that I don't really recycle builds. Like, I have done it a couple times, but almost every build that I do is a fresh build. Alright. Flip that up. Let's reseat the cart. Yeah, sorry guys, spoiler alert, but I've been sitting on this kit for like 2 months now, but I haven't been able to do anything with it because I wasn't supposed to leak it. I think that's a working membrane. Alright, so we plug that in, pull up to the same place in game. I think we have a working touch sensor that does brightness. So at the minimum level of brightness, at 2.4 volts, this Game Boy is pulling 193 to 202 milliamps. So a little over double. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know if it hit. 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10 levels of brightness. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And at max brightness, this thing pulls 332 to 337 milliamps, so quite a bit. If we hold this, do we get anything? I don't know. It doesn't matter. My kit's, like I said several times already, my kit is not feature complete, so I don't have all the features. I don't have an OSD. We're going to solder it up anyway and see what happens, but there you go. Oh, I shouldn't have turned that off already. Should have done a close-up. Alright, so here is the overworld in my kit. I'm not looking at this thing very closely, but looking at it through the camera, looking at it from, God, what are we, like 6 inches away? Ooh, that's not supposed to flicker like that. I think that's, okay, there we go. Hold that steady so it's not moving around. It looks pretty decent to me. I don't have any major problems. Let me do a little bit more of the install, because I never actually tested this screen. I tested this one. So Karker and Ricky RNS are asking about where I get most of my Game Boys. Forgive me if I don't share that information, because the more I talk about where I get my Game Boys, the more expensive they get. So I'm going to be a little bit selfish on that and say, sorry, but if you do some research, I'm sure you'll find out. Alright. Oh, we should do the soldering, huh? Yeah, let's do the soldering first. Last time I said where I got my Game Boys, the prices on them all doubled. And I'm not saying I did that, but I don't want that to happen again. Alright, so I'm fairly certain if you order one of these kits, it will come with wires. Mine didn't, but that's besides the point. Let's do TP2, TP9, and TP8. Ooh, that is way too high. Had my soldering iron turned up a little bit high. So I totally forget offhand what TP2 is, if that's start or select, but TP8 and TP9 should be L and R. And I believe this is the recommended button combo. You can use any buttons you want. There we go. And hell, we can even get a little bit fancy with the wire routing. Do some cable management. And that labeling on there, I don't know if they changed it, but it's kind of misleading to have S, R, and L on those pads right there when you have L, R, and cell right there. But it is what it is. Now, again, my kit is not feature complete. It does not have an OSD. This is a sample. I have no idea if I'm wasting my time bothering to solder this up. I might be, I might not be. We'll find out. I wish this wire was a little bit longer. Easy, just like that. And then I don't know where this touch sensor is supposed to go. I mean, obviously it's supposed to go right there, but I don't know if there's supposed to be like some adhesive to stick that down or anything. I'm gonna just leave it free balling, I guess, as they say. And is this supposed to go under the bracket or above it? Probably above it. Actually, it probably makes more sense under the bracket. Yeah. It's kind of weird. I liked the, I really liked how they did the ITA kit, where you can solder to that little breakout ribbon and then plug it in. That makes this easier. Let me double check. Before I break something. Well, apparently you're supposed to use some foam on the left and bottom here. Mine didn't come with anything, and I don't have appropriately sized foam, I don't think. And it's right behind my jig, so I can't even get to it. My camera jig. Oh, I see why I'm having problems. This cutout is supposed to go right here. That is supposed to go like that. Yeah? So I guess let's do that. And then that. It's a miracle how easy this stuff gets once you actually read the instructions. Did I remove? I did not. Okay. Before continuing, I need to modify this shell. Remove that little bit of plastic right there. Come on, get in there. It's kind of fiddly because there is a little outcropping on the screen. There's this little extra bit of ribbon on the screen that hits one of the capacitors on the ribbon. Oh, shoot. And things don't quite seat right. Okay, I think we're good. Don't worry about it. Why is that open? I didn't do that. Don't forget your light pipe. Come on. Easy. Look at that. Who'd have known it'd be so easy if I'd have just followed the instructions? Now I need... Oh, shoot. I should use those. I totally forgot I had those. Next time, baby. Subnova is asking about clicky shoulder buttons versus the original rubber domes. I personally like the clicky ones because there's a little bit more feedback when you're actually pressing the button. But I can understand why people might prefer the original rubber dome. I guess it's not really a rubber dome, it's more like a rubber, there's a specific term. I want to say plunger. I don't think it's a plunger. The problem with the super clicky ones, though, is that they don't really make a drop-in tactile switch. Well, I guess that's really a problem with the original rubber dome ones, too. Alright. So, because of who I am as a person, apparently I just don't have batteries handy. Problem is, I keep putting them in consoles and then putting the console away, which is like the worst thing you can do, at least with alkaline batteries. I'm not too worried about my nickel metal hydrides, but... What was TP2? Is that select? Yeah, all I got is brightness. Has Funnyplaying shown how to pull up the OSD? I mean, obviously mine's not going to come up. But I thought it would just be like, hold select LNR. And yeah, I don't have those features, so I can't show them off. Like I've said, several times already, and forgive me if you're tired of hearing me say that, but I know quite a few people dropped into this stream after I've said it. So this specific kit I got about 2 months ago before they even finished the OSD. My kit does not have the OSD, which means I don't have... I guess it means I don't have those extra features. I was hoping maybe there'd be like a button combo to toggle them. If you want to use the OSD, you need to weld the LR select. Yeah. That's what I thought. Alright. Fair enough. Alright, before I bring up the tests, I've already ran the horizontal and vertical line test, and that is what I posted on the Twitter. And let me just go ahead and bring that up. I'm going to pull this up off screen because otherwise someone's going to send me something. I just know it. Alright. So on Twitter, I posted this picture here. If you zoom in, you can see there is, there is a checkerboard pattern. On an original GBA, how this pattern is supposed to work is there's supposed to be 1 pixel black, 1 pixel white, and then alternating each row so you get that checkerboard. But it's supposed to be 1 pixel. Now, if you look closely, you can see that it's not quite even. And if we look at it under the microscope, you can see that's why. Because some of them take up 3 pixels horizontally, and some of them take up 2 pixels horizontally. So what that usually results in is like weird scaling, like blurry text, something like that. And I want to see if it's something that I can like genuinely notice by just playing a game, or if it's something that I only see with synthetic tests. Because the general consensus is, if you notice it, it's going to look terrible, and it's going to be a constant thing that you notice every time you're playing. And I can say, genuinely, with honesty, that just running around in Pokemon, I can't even tell. So if I look at something like, for example, this sign, and then run left and right, I can see that there's a little bit of flicker with it. This is something that I'm going to have to like take a video, and I guess I'll post to Twitter or something after this, because I'm sorry, 30 FPS, it's probably not coming out very well. I can see that there is some flicker. But honestly, like, this looks fine. This is totally great. Look at the text. I don't see any problems with that text. That looks great. Subnova's asking about the ripple. I can't answer that question. The bracket that I have holding the screen in is a prototype version that they revised before releasing the ITA kit, and then revised again after releasing the ITA kit. So mine is 2 versions old. So any ripple that I have, it's hard to say if that's from the bracket or something else. The shell and the LCD are final. The ribbon itself is final, but the firmware on the ribbon is not. And the bracket is a much older prototype version. So I can see some pressing on the faceplate right here, right against the edge. Only on this side. Like, just pressing the button though, I don't see anything. But again, it's an old bracket, I can't say for certain. I will get one of these kits in. They released, what, like yesterday? And they just, as far as I can tell, don't exist in the States yet. I mean, it's going to be a few weeks before I can get my hands on one. But I'll do another video with the actual final version, and then we can put them side by side. But just running around, I have zero problems with it. Let's try some synthetic tests now. Yeah, again, this is not a retail kit. There are a few little things different. Notably, I have no OSD. Let's try... Let's do the stress test with the 240p. Turn that light off and move it so I can rest my elbow on the table. Hold this a little bit steadier. Oh, killed that light too, so there's no glare. So if we pull up the grid, you can see that the window is nice and even. You can see everything, nothing's getting cut off. Looks fine to me. Linearity, I'm gonna hold that at an angle so I can look at it. It doesn't look quite... It's close, it's super close. But it almost looks a little bit wider than it is tall. I think I'd have to digitally manipulate that to find out. So it's close enough. The text, I don't see any problems with the text. Like I can see, if you look real closely at this shirt graphics here, you can see it's a little bit blurry. Which one were we looking for? Shadow sprite. Let's see how the shadows test. So, I've said this dozens of times. Hazy brings up a good point. Let me get a 9380 kit. I can't do that. I don't have any batteries. I've said this dozens of times. The original Game Boy Advance doesn't have a way to... Original Game Boy Advance. Original Game Boy doesn't have a way to do transparency for sprites. So how devs worked around it was they would just take a sprite and flicker it on and off as quick as they can, and the horrible pixel response times of the original screens would result in a nice amount of transparency. What I'm testing right now is I'm leaving it in one spot long enough to see if there's any image retention. And then if I move it over, you can see, yeah, there's a little bit of image retention. So it's not great. It's actually, that looks pretty on par with the 9380s. I don't have a regular Game Boy Advance with a 9380 in it that I can put batteries in, but I have a Slate with a 9380. And a flash card that I actually use for games, so it's not in my history. Also, my touch sensor appears to have moved since I've been in this last, because every time I touch it... There we go. This specific Slate predates the button controls, so I had to use a touch sensor. And of course, the current shipping Slates don't use touch sensors, they use button controls, so it's a whole thing. But anyway, let's get the shadow spray. I'll pop that up right in the same place. Set that down right next. I hope that's coming out all right on camera. I know it's pretty far away. I can't really zoom in. My current camera rig is, I swapped out, I used to use this shitty little lamp that I got at Goodwill, and I just mounted a camera holder to it. But I've since upgraded to a gas piston monitor stand, and it does go down, but it's spring-loaded, and I don't want to hit myself in the face because it's not weighted. It's designed for a monitor, and I have a phone sitting in it, so... Anyway. performance between these two screens, honestly, looks pretty similar. This specific LCD, I believe, is one of the original LG screens, so they're not actually shipping that specific LCD anymore. I've got in all these boxes of goodies one of the newer Funnyplaying LCDs that I want to swap this thing out with eventually. That's not it. There it is. See, I did have one. So Funnyplaying went pretty hardcore into the screen manufacturing business and made their own 9380s. I have a an Imager album that highlights the differences between these things if you want to see which make is which. The image retention on each make is slightly different, so it's kind of hard to compare apples and oranges. But with the image retention, I mean, they both kind of suck, let's be honest. And we'll get to that later. That's for another review. I'm going to do full screen stripes. And so, let me bring up the crosshatch pattern. Here is the previous IPS kit, the 9380 based ones. This is probably coming out horrible on the stream. I'm gonna have to take pictures of that. And then here is the brand new IPS one. You can see there's almost like a little pattern going down every few columns where it's slightly darker just because of the scaling. The horizontal scaling is fine. It's the vertical scaling that's a problem. Or vice versa. I'm sorry, I keep getting them backwards. Here is just that menu, if you want to compare it. This is the 3.0, as they call it. And the 3.0, by the way, is referring to the screen size, not like version 3. This is slightly bigger at 3.2 inches, and there's that menu. I was very pleased when they came out with the new iteration of that kit. I was showing off earlier the original release of the 9380 mods, but the second version of the 9380 mods, I think, was peak. So far looking at this, like, I can tell side by side, text on this one looks better. It just does. However, had I not put these side by side, I don't think I would have even noticed a problem. This thing is ITA. Let's do laminated ITA because that already has a battery in it. And where's my test ROM? There it is. Pretty sure that's 240p. Yeah, look at that. And so this bottom one is the ITA kit. What were we on? Full screen stripes. Just for comparison, that is the ITA kit, which does not use any scaling whatsoever. It's 1:1. Touch sensors drive me crazy. If you don't have them secured, they do ridiculous crap like this. I bet violence would solve that problem, but I don't feel like dealing with it. Alright, I have been paying very little attention to chat. I'm sorry, guys. Does anyone have any outstanding questions? If you asked a question and I missed it, I'm sorry. Feel free to ask again. Marps is asking, what does 9380 mean? 9380 refers to this specific LCD. Why do we call it 9380? Simple. We call it a 9380 LCD because it is literally out of a BlackBerry Curve 9380. If you look up an old BlackBerry phone called the Curve 9380, you will find a very familiar looking LCD because that's where these come from. It is the exact same reason why we call the Game Boy Color ones Q5. That's not it. We call these things Q5 screens because they are out of a BlackBerry Q5. That's pretty much it. Like, it's not a big secret. It's not some grand conspiracy. I started calling them that just to try and keep track. I have no idea what we should call this one because I have no idea what it's out of. I haven't done any research on that. I don't even know if it's out of anything or if this is a brand new LCD. But there you go. I'm going to have to take this thing apart and either cut that touch sensor off entirely or at least secure it to the shell. Oh, that's cool. Okay. I guess I did only have it plugged in for all of 5 minutes. What's even in here? Old Funnyplaying. Okay. I have no idea if that supports playing charge. But we'll pretend it does just for the sake of the video. That could be why the brightness was cycling, because now it's stable. Oh. The shadow spray test, I think, is most telling for ITA, because the ITA doesn't have any image retention, not with this specific test, nor does it show any flickering. It's actually really solid when it comes to this specific test. But I guess that has something to do with the fact that it's a screen from the same era that all this stuff was designed for, so just happens to have similar pixel response times. Okay, let me review chat. I'm sorry. I asked a question. I asked you guys for questions, and then I didn't even look at chat. Off-topic question, do you think there might be an IPS good quality screens for Nintendo DS or DSi in the future? DS, I sincerely doubt. DSi, I also sincerely doubt, but maybe DS Lite. DSi is actually already pretty solid. Why does the ITA screen have a little texture over everything? The ITA screen is just a matte finish. Whereas every other screen is got a glossy texture. These things are just matte. It is what it is. I personally really like it. You lose that texture once it's laminated, but it is what it is. I think it cuts down on glare quite a bit. It does unfortunately result in lower graphical fidelity, but with how big these pixels are, I don't really think it makes a difference. I think it actually helps. These LCDs are from a Panasonic camera. Interesting. I did not know that. That makes sense that they're from something. I can't imagine that Funnyplaying would have had new LCDs made, but then made them in the wrong resolution. That'd be kind of weird. So the width of a 9380 screen works out to about 64.25 millimeter wide and 42.5 tall. The ITA is 61.25 millimeter wide and 41 millimeter tall. And then this new screen here is 62.25 wide by 41 tall. So I think that's about almost exactly the same size as the ITA. I don't know, I've already forgotten the numbers. My short-term memory is freaking garbage right now. I suppose let's do diagonally. We've got 76.8 diagonal on 9380. $74.25 on ITA. And 74.75 on the new IPS. So it looks like the new IPS is just a hair bigger than ITA, but it's still smaller than the 9380. That being said, a stock size lens should work with these. I don't know if they're ever going to make any non-laminated iterations of this specific kit, but if they do, it doesn't look like they'll have to make any custom lenses. Ricky's asking, do you think an HDMI kit will fit inside the 3.0 screen kits? I already have an HDMI kit and I'd hate to let it go to waste just to get a laminated screen. Ricky, I think you have, with those 3.0 kits, I think you have just about the best chance of getting... I think that's one of the best options for one of those like HDMI interposer things. The 3.0 screen is about 2.4 millimeters, whereas the 9380 is 1.68. So the 9380 is quite a bit thinner, but since they don't make that in a laminated form factor, you have to use the stock form factor, which includes an air gap. I think this is about the thinnest you can get right now, unless they ever make the 9380s in laminated. I'm gonna come back to you, Killing Spoon. I promise. That's gonna take me a little bit longer to answer, so I don't want to delve into a tangent. Someone's asking, do ITA screens work with the GBA SP001? Yes, but you need an adapter to get it to plug in. In fact, you need the same adapter I used in this thing to get that original 9380 kit. But it does just work. Funnyplaying is making an ITA version for the SP though, so if you just wait for that, you won't even need an adapter. And then Killing Spoon's asking which one I prefer. Killing Spoon, are you asking which one I prefer of these three kits? Like the new 3.0, the ITA, and then the 9380? Because my preference has always been the 9380. Like, I think we peaked when this kit came out, and we've been kind of stagnant since then. It looks like performance is extremely similar between the 9380 and this new 3.0 kit in terms of both power usage, pixel response, hell, even viewing angles. I didn't really discuss that. This is an IPS, so the viewing angles on it are pretty darn good. So all other things being equal, I just like the even scaling, the integer scaling, and the slightly larger screen. ITA, however, you know, the viewing angles kind of suck, but the power usage on it is still really solid, and the performance on it is a little bit more accurate than something like both of these screens. So my personal preference is the 9380 screen, but ITA is also really, like, I like all of these screens. I really do. But if we take ITA out of the running, just get out of here. Between these two, 9380 hands down. If I can't get this, I will still be happy with this. And since I cannot get this in laminated, except in, I mean, I can get it in laminated because I had them made. But not counting slates, like in the original Game Boy Advance form factor. I think this is still pretty decent. If Funnyplaying makes 9380s for their laminated ecosystem they've got going on, I will hands down recommend the 9380 over this one. But if you want a laminated screen in a GBA, this is fine. I honestly have no real big complaints. I can see looking at these two pixel sprites. Excuse me. Looking at these two sprites, like I can see this one is a little bit sharper, this one's a little bit blurrier. But that's almost, at this point, that's almost like a personal preference thing. I know when, why is that so crooked? I know when these things originally launched, the V2, as they call it, I hate using that name, but whatever. When these style kits originally launched, I know a lot of people were very particular about how sharp it looked. Like, they just didn't like how basically it looked like an emulator. In my personal opinion, with such a low resolution setup, I think it actually looks really good. Like this was never CRT gaming. This was never meant to be blurred. This was always an LCD console. All of the art was designed to be viewed on an LCD. So the fact that this is nice and sharp and the contrast is just so much better, I thought it looked really good. I don't think I was alone in that, but I also don't think that was the popular opinion. or at the very least, there were quite a few vocal proponents. Oh, Lily's bringing up a very good point. Do you think my opinion might change with the new features? I think my opinion would change if my kit had the new features. But at the same time, those new features can also be brought to the old kit. So, I don't know if that's exactly a fair comparison. Between these two specific kits, though, if this one was the retail version, I think I would choose that one. I like the option of having the like the color palettes. It's something that I've been asking for a very long time, and like no one understood what I was asking for until Retro 6 finally made something, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we can do that." I'm like, "Oh come on, people! I've been asking 2 years, 3 years." So yeah, the new features, there's a pixel grid emulation mode, a color palette chooser, a little bit pretty similar to how the Analog Pocket does it. Boot that thing up. What did I say? Pixel grid, color palettes. There was 3. Totally forgot. Pixel grid, color palette. Oh yeah, and frame blending. That's it. So the frame blending would actually take care of this issue, I think, with the flickering sprites. I don't know if it'll take care of the image retention, but it'll definitely take care of the flickering. But yeah, it's pretty similar to what the Analog Pocket does. So with the Analog Pocket, since I don't have a feature complete kit, I'll show this off on the Analog Pocket. On the Pocket, you have 3 different display modes. The original mode just displays it as the colors are sent. So in a lot of games, that results in a pretty accurate depiction of what the colors should look like. But in some games, the developers intentionally muted the colors or cranked up the contrast. I'm forgetting which way it goes. I think they cranked up the contrast because the original GBA screen was pretty dark. So if they cranked up the contrast within the GBA, it would try and compensate for how dark the screen is. So that's what this is. So if we turn on original GBA LCD mode, you notice everything gets a little bit more muted. So for some games, I think it is like Donkey Kong Country, this actually results in the colors looking significantly better. In something like Pokemon Emerald, I don't think it looks better, but I suppose it does technically look a little bit more accurate. And then you have the SP 101 look, which includes a little bit of pixel grid emulation, but also it mutes the colors slightly, but it makes it look a little bit more how it would look on a AGS 101. Which, actually, while we're here, let's test this game. Let's do it on the Pocket first, because I want to show why this is important. So this is a game called ZAS. It has a longer name, but it's really hard to pronounce, and I don't know what it is offhand, and I didn't write it down. But search ZAS. It'll show up as ZAS. Anyway, the problem is that this game uses a transparent background, which gives you quite a lot of flickering, and I don't even see it coming out on the camera. I can see it in person, but I can't see it on the camera. But if we go into the pocket, not tools, settings, systems, GB, video. Let's pause that. And we turn frame blending on. You can see there is no flickering whatsoever. Everything is nice and smooth and displaying exactly as it should. Exactly as the hardware, exactly as it would have looked on the original hardware. Well, not exactly, because it's a really nice screen. But there's no flickering, really. That is one of the features that was implemented into this kit that I do not have accessible to me because I don't have the OSD. So let's see how this game looks on here. Yeah, about what I expected. Plenty of flickering. And again, sorry, this 30 FPS highly compressed stream is probably not doing this justice. But it's actually pretty on par with how this thing is going to display it. Ta-da. Yeah, in the preview, I see almost no flickering. But yeah, we'll have to readdress this when I get the final kit, and then I'll shoot a video in 60 FPS, and that should help quite a bit. Yeah, because unfortunately my specific kit does not have frame blending. Was there anything you guys wanted me to check out on this thing before I call this stream here? Minecraft G-Man is asking how we can get the pocket. Well, you can order one from Amazon Analog and get in the queue, and they'll probably ship sometime next year, maybe. Or you can buy one from a scalper on eBay. Otherwise, you don't get one, unfortunately. I don't know. Maybe this thing will end up in an SP since I happen to have a bare screen that isn't laminated. John Harrington is asking if the Analog Pocket is worth it. If you can get one at MSRP and you were considering a modded Game Boy, this is better than any modded Game Boy you can hope to make. It has way more features. It works better. The screen is freaking beautiful. Already has USB-C, already has a rechargeable battery, the buttons are great. I hear some people really like the new features where you can run stuff off the SD card, but I think the whole point of buying something that takes cartridges and then running it off an SD card is, like, dumb. Like, why are you buying this to run things off the SD card? That's quite frankly stupid. Because These things are a quarter the price and available now and run just as well when you're putting ROMs on an SD card, but what the hell is that? That's gone is what it is. But yeah, straight up for the 220 bucks or whatever, I guess 270-ish with shipping, because of course analog has stupid expensive shipping. Like, this is cheaper than any modded Game Boy that you would pay someone to build for you. And it takes cards. The screens just look absolutely fantastic. So yeah, if you can get one, it's absolutely worth it. The problem is availability. And since they aren't available, then it's not worth considering. Because at the scalper price, it stops being worth it. So I mentioned of the Steam Deck too, and like those things are pretty cool, but the size makes it a little bit hard to recommend as a alternative. There's actually that new Anbernic Win 600. Like, if you're genuinely considering a Steam Deck, that new Anbernic Win 600 looks pretty sweet. Obviously, it's nowhere near as powerful as a Steam Deck, but if you weren't intending on playing like brand new AAA games, then probably won't even matter. It's also that what is it? Neo Air, I think it is. That thing looks pretty good too. The one with the OLED screen. I think once they've got the, I think once AMD gets those new APUs out that actually uses the same GPU cores that are in the Steam Deck, or better for that matter, I think once those start popping up on the market, I think this type of console will be actually like really good and viable. Until then, there are quite a few caveats to hardware like this type of form factor. Like this, it's just freaking huge. There's no... The nice thing about a Game Boy is I can just put this in my pocket and take it to work. This does not fit in the pocket of any pants I own, and I fear the type of pants that I would have to buy to get this thing to fit inside them. I mean, this ain't the 90s anymore. I'm not rocking Jinkos. Thing makes the Switch Lite look tiny. I don't know. The Win 600 like, obviously it's a cheap piece of junk. Like, I think anyone who looks at that and thinks, oh yeah, that's a quality bit of hardware is just deluding themselves. But it's also like 370 bucks for the reasonably spec'd one. And I think at that price point, it's excuse me. It's hard to argue against it at that price. I mean, I don't have one in hand. I can't say with certainty, but I have seen some of the reviews, and like they have confirmed my suspicions. Do you need to do any cutting to put a new LCD in a GBA SP? Well, Marps, that depends. If you don't mind using one of the new IPS ready shells, like this thing here, if you look at a normal SP on the... Oh, my light's off. That's why it's not working. You can see there's these like ridges on the inside. There's this one right here. But on the IPS ready ones, it's missing the ridge on this side so that you don't have to cut it. I wish YouTube would do something about spam bots. So yeah, as long as you're fine using one of the IPS ready shells, you don't have to do any cutting or anything. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I already kind of started mentioning it. So Funnyplaying is working on an ITA version of for the SP, but it also requires a custom shell, which they're also working on. So if you don't mind waiting for Funnyplaying, you buy their shell and their kit. You know, it's Legos basically. I don't know. The Steam Deck, I think you have to hold one to really appreciate it. It looks weird, but it's actually like genuinely really comfy in the hand. Like all the buttons are perfectly within reach. You don't have to like do weird stretches to hit things. It's all right there. It's actually really comfy. It's just, you know, freaking huge. I mean, I'll concede that it does look super weird. Dude, this thing even makes the Game Gear look small. I didn't swap out the joysticks or anything. Like, there's no problem with my joysticks. I'm not gonna mod it preemptively. Like, the modded sticks don't perform any differently than the existing ones. And if the whole appeal of those Ghoulie Kit sticks is that they won't wear out and they won't drift, it's like, well, mine already don't drift, so... Nah, Aaron, I haven't tried Boxy Pixel's GB Pocket Color. And for what it's worth, that's not a Pocket Color. That's just a Game Boy Color in a different form factor shell. That's not even close to a Pocket Color. I made the original Pocket Color, alright? I know what a pocket color is. What Boxy Pixel made isn't a pocket color. If someone made one of these things before me, I would love to know about it, because I have never seen it. Never seen anyone else do one of these before I made mine. I didn't do all the legwork on this. It was actually thanks to one of my good buddies, Hazi. He did a lot of the research on the cuts and the wiring. But he also never put one together. He utilized his research. Utilized his research that he was so kind to share with me, and fairly certain I made the first one. I have a battery charger. Oh, there it is. Oh, I found one battery. I had to trim the board pretty significantly. There's two different boards in here. This is a Game Boy Pocket and a Game Boy Color board. So yeah, I'd say I had to trim it significantly. Oh, I just found my headphones. I've been missing those for a while. They were stuck with a magnet to something. Alright, gents, I think we're getting off track. So, magnet. I got them beans. Ooh, the red light means they're low, I think. Yeah, honestly, I don't have a problem with this 3.0 kit. Like, there were some people who were very vocal about the scaling being an issue, and I agree that Funnyplaying should have been way more forward about the scaling. I was genuinely concerned that it was going to be one of their, like, another one of their V1.0 kit shenanigans. Of course, this thing's dead. Which is why I went out of my way to do this stream today. But honestly, I think it's fine. Like, it's a little bit blurrier than the 9380, but it's still perfectly usable. Here we go. Oh. I'm several beers deep at this point, so forgive me. I've totally forgotten if I've already answered this, but Sever, I did kind of make a video on the Pocket Color, but I never actually published it, so no, I didn't make a video on it. Hell, I even started making a video on this thing, but I didn't really get that far. It's shockingly good. The conclusion I came to on the Pocket Color stuff was If you need to be taught how to make one, then it's likely not within your skill set to make one. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, it's not a beginner project. So if you have the prerequisite knowledge that is required to make one, then I think you already have the ability to figure it out for yourself. This is one of the nice things about Game Boys, though. You just pop in a cart and it just works. Oh, yeah. You can see the reflection of my shirt on this giant screen. No, I'm not selling shirts. I just had one made for myself for cons and such because I thought it would be neat. No, I'm not selling merch. This channel is run by me solely as a hobby. There's no profit incentive for me. I don't take sponsorships, not really. I mean, if someone wants to send me something to do a video on, I'll certainly do that. But if they want to pay me to advertise something, that's a different story, and I'm not doing that. But like, this thing is genuinely really cool. And like, it just works, man. It runs really well. I don't want to get into this. We'll be here another 40 minutes if I do. But yeah, I bought the 256 because I had no idea that the 64 would be upgradable when they... Valve announced these things and then released details like a day later, and I was afraid they'd get analog pocketed, so I placed my reservation really early, and I bought the 256. Had I known that the 64 gig was the literal exact same module, exact same model, but with a different storage module in it, I'd have just bought the 64 and upgraded it myself. But I didn't know that, so I didn't do that. So, Sever, if you genuinely want to make a Pocket Color, pop into the Game Boy Discord. It's just discord.gg/gameboy. There are quite a few people in there, including myself, who are more than willing to help you out with it. But the deal is, you got to do your own legwork. We will check your homework and we'll point you in the right direction, but you got to do your own legwork first. There's also Natalie the Nerd just released. Actually, I don't know if it's released yet, but I have one, and I've been meaning to make a video on it. Thank you, Gib, for posting that link. She made a board that is the bottom half of a pocket, so you don't have to cut up a pocket to make one of these, but you still do have to cut up a color, and it does make the wiring quite a bit easier. I think Jake, what's his face, made a video on it. I haven't seen it, but if he was able to make one, then I think just about anyone should be able to make one. Don't take that the wrong way. I just realized how that sounds. I'm sorry. Jake Simmons? Jake something. Yeah, I totally get where she's coming from if she's not if she's still thinking about whether she should release it or not, it's like, unlike a backlight kit, you can revert those mods. But once you cut a Game Boy Color in half, like, you either gotta commit or buy another Game Boy. Like, there's no uncutting a board in half. Alright, my tea's halfway done. You guys have until I finish my tea. And then I'm ending the stream. Steam Deck, though, it's pretty neat. I think if you know it's something you'd use, then it's probably a good deal. But if you're one of those weird people that just doesn't already have a Steam library full of tons of games, then it's probably not the best idea. Also, I don't ever really go anywhere, so I don't ever really use it, because when I'm home, I just have my gaming PC that I can use, and that runs games faster at higher fidelity. Carax is asking, do I have any suggestions for Game Boy Color rechargeable battery mods? Yeah, my suggestion is don't bother. Get yourself a good set of rechargeable nickel metal hydride batteries. You're gonna have a much better experience with those. So, by far, the best battery life that you can get on a console is if you pop a set of these in there. Second to that, these are a good call. I haven't... Oh, there we go. I was looking for my actual pack of these things. I have a lot of batteries. I never bothered opening these because I bought so many packs of these things. But these are by far the best bang for buck batteries. A 4-pack of these things used to be $7. I think it's $8 now. But at 2450 milliamp hours, it is a genuinely good battery. I've done quite a bit of testing on Game Boy Advances specifically, because there are all these different battery mods for those, and without exception, the Ladas were the best bang buck every single time. Every single time. I did find a few battery mods that did get like better longevity compared to the Ladas, but they were also like $40 versus the Ladas, which are like $4 for a pair. And like with the Ladas, you know, you keep one pair on the charger and you keep another pair in your GBA, and then when your batteries die, you just swap them and you're good to go. Whereas with the lithium ion mods, you have to like recharge your Game Boy almost after every use. Without a doubt, it is significantly better to just use rechargeable nickel metal batteries. The single only reason I'm using these battery mods is because I already bought them and I already tested them and I already have them. I don't know where the hell my AA's are. They're probably in controllers and batteries and... Nope, that's rechargeable. I don't know. They're somewhere. I'll find them for next time. But yeah, by far, rechargeable batteries are the best deal. Like, on a modded Game Boy Advance with a backlight kit and a regular game, not an EverDrive or Easy Flash, I think the Ladas get me about 10 hours, whereas the rechargeable battery mods are also getting me about 10 hours, maybe 9, depending on which specific one it is. But some of those you can't even run all the way down. You risk damaging the battery if you let it run to empty. Whereas with the Ladas, you can run them to empty as much as you want. If you don't have an IKEA nearby, like don't bother buying them to ship. Like I really like the Ladas, but if you can't just pop into an IKEA, and this is what the packaging is supposed to look like. They rebranded them. They used to be white. Now they come in this packaging, and they're like a greenish color now. Somewhere. But if you can't just pop into your local IKEA and get them, don't bother getting them shipped. It's not worth it. Buy the Eneloop Pros instead if you have to have them shipped. But like, there's no meaningful difference between the battery life, and if you just look at the raw numbers, the AA's more often than not just get you better battery life, and for a fraction of the price. That and the fact that it's a 4-pack, which means you have 2 pair. Christian, so I actually have a video on that if you want to check it out. Search my channel for nickel metal hydride. I did a video on a purple GBA, not this purple, but the midnight blue, and I put a internal nickel metal hydride charger in that. I think Esoteric Sean actually referenced my video when he made one too. George, I'm sorry that you fell for the Retro 6 marketing, but all of their hardware and their support is just absolute garbage, and I really don't recommend it. If you're using anything, if you're using any quote-unquote third-party stuff with their stuff, you're going to have a bad time. But ask them for support. And if they try and sell you something else, don't be surprised, because that's just how they operate. But the folks in my comments really, they've got it right, you know? You're going to have a much better time if you just ditch them. Oh, also, I guess I'll do a quick shout out while I'm here. I forget who made this, but someone makes and sells these on Etsy, and if you have a slate, they're actually pretty nice cases. I'll throw a link in the description after I find it. Tiago, you should contact Crix. Contact EverDrive support. If you ran the diagnostic and the diagnostic says a problem, then there's nothing else you should do about that. They're probably going to ask you to return it, and good luck with return shipping. International shipping sucks, but unfortunately it is what it is. Yeah, George, I'm sorry, man. Like, they lie about almost all of their listings, and then when you try and contact them for support, they just try and sell you something else. Like, I've had genuine experiences where I've ordered something and they just leave stuff out of my order. Contact them about it and they say, "Oh yeah, we'll just include it in your next order." Like, no, just ship it to me now. I already paid for it. I already paid for shipping. I'm not paying for shipping again. Screw off, man. Holy cow. Thanks, Gib. That's the shell. Appreciate you. I don't know what the difference between Eneloop and Eneloop Pros specifically is. My understanding is that the capacity is lower on one of them, but the one with the lower capacity is also supposed to allegedly last longer, like through more charge cycles. So I guess it just depends on what you want specifically. I gotta swap out my lights, man. Like this one, the battery died like an hour ago and it's been in low brightness since. This one's been on just as long and it's at half battery. I certainly get my usage out of these things. Isaac, I'm not singing you a song. Not again. I'm not falling for this again. In terms of battery life, if you're genuinely concerned, the EverDrive Mini gets better battery. Well, for GBA, the EverDrive Mini gets better battery life, followed by the Easy Flash Omega Definitive Edition, followed by the Easy Flash Omega. Anything else is not worth considering for flash carts, but all of those suck in comparison to actual legit original carts. Those get better battery life than all of them. I did a video a while back on the Easy Flash Omega Definitive Edition, specifically on the power usage. Somewhere in that video, probably in the description, there is a link to a spreadsheet that has specific numbers on a bunch of different carts I tested. But realistically, unless you're like genuinely sitting there playing for 10 hours straight, you're not going to notice a difference. If you're using rechargeable batteries, just recharge it whenever you're done playing. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Like people are constantly so concerned about batteries, and it's like with all these lithium mods, you just, if you're done playing, you just plug it in. And then you have more battery life. Nickel metal hydride batteries, you don't have to deplete them before charging. That was a nickel cadmium thing. Nickel cadmium hasn't been a thing you can buy in like 20 years. Okay, maybe not 20 years, but like 15. Alright guys, my tea's done. That means it's that time. I'm gonna finish up with the questions that are in chat, but otherwise after that I'm ending the stream. Tiago's asking about their charger. Yeah, anything with a USB-C port, you should be able to charge with just about any charger. If the mod is done properly, it will negotiate whatever voltages it needs, and it will pull whatever current it needs. You shouldn't have to worry about it. If it wasn't done properly, then it just won't charge. Like, it's not going to harm anything. It's just going to not charge. That's all. I have not really messed with amps, Kyrox. Sorry. I personally don't really give a hoot about audio on Game Boys. When I'm actually playing these things, I'm almost always in public, so I just have the volume turned down because I don't want to bother other people with the sounds from my shitty little game player. And even then, it's not like the audio sounds good. It was never meant to sound good. It was just meant to work. So, yeah, sorry. I'm not the best person to ask for that because I just genuinely don't care. And I haven't looked into it. But on that note, I have a USB-C modded Game Boy. You just plug it in, it just works. It's fine. Subnova, not specifically the Funnyplaying one. Or at least I'd have to check my notes. I don't remember. I recorded all this information. Excuse me. Like I said earlier, I have basically everyone on the market, and I've tested these things, and I made notes, and I intend to make a video on it eventually. But when in doubt, if you have one of these battery mods, just recharge it whenever it's convenient for you. You don't have to wait for it to run down. And if you do that, you shouldn't have a problem. Because I personally think it's highly unlikely that you're actually genuinely going to sit there and play it for 10 hours or more in one sitting. Papa's asking about the Ultimate GBA, and yeah, people in the comments already have it right. I designed the slate because it's the Game Boy I wanted. I didn't design it to sell. That came afterwards. That's why it took so long. I designed what I wanted, and then I refined it so it was something we could sell. But I designed the slate because it's what I wanted, and I'm happy with it, and I don't intend to change anything. But anyway, that's all I've got, folks. I gotta call it a night. It's already 9 p.m. for me, and I still haven't eaten. I mean, I've been snacking. But also, this has been a 2-hour and 15-minute stream. It's been quite lengthy. I'm gonna go do something about dinner, and before I go, check this out. You guys like custom Game Boy Advance buttons? Huh? I'm throwing them because I didn't realize that bag was open. My buddy Retro CNC is making some wicked cool stuff. I don't know what his plans are for stuff like this, but sheesh. Should have put it in here. Alright folks, catch us all next time, which will probably be when I get the retail version of this kit. Peace!